Genetic modification is the alteration of an organism's DNA using biotechnology. This means that the genes in an organism have either been removed, put in, or changed artificially. Various techniques have been applied in numerous fields, including research, agriculture, industrial biotechnology, and medicine. The most relevant type of genetically modified products to our life is food, which has changed our lives in beneficial and enriching ways ever since it was introduced in the market in 1994. One of the first genetic modifications for food was in corn plants. A gene that produces a type of protein which kills insect larvae was injected into corn plants. This protects them from deadly insects such as the European corn borer, as the corn plant now produces the same kind of protein. Also, there is no need to continually inject these genes into every generation of corn crops that has been produced, as the genes are in the DNA of the plant, and it will be passed on to the next generation, and the same characteristics will show in the next generation of plants. This applies for all other forms of organism or food.
Genetic modification crops or GM crops allow farmers to do things that previously seemed impossible. With GM crops, farmers no longer have to spray plants with pesticides because the plants themselves have built-in protection. They can produce varieties that are more resistant to pests and diseases. For example, a gene that gives resistance to a fungal infection in a wild plant can be inserted into a food plant that lacks this protection. The crop is then less susceptible to this disease. Even some environmentalists feel that GM crops help the environment because they reduce the need for pesticides. They can produce greater amount of crops with lesser seeds, cutting back costs immensely. Furthermore, plants that are modified to resist herbicides need not be tilted into the ground after they die, because one broad-spectrum herbicide is used instead of many. This could reduce soil erosion by a projected 70%, giving advantage to farmers enormously, as they lose 25 billion tons of soil every year due to soil erosion. GM foods even hold the promise of crops that can grow in places that plants could never grow before, such as salt-laden areas. Foods can be engineered to taste better, which could encourage people to eat more healthy foods that are currently not popular because of their taste, such as broccoli and spinach. It may be possible to insert genes that produce more or different flavors as well.
Even though genetically modified food is accepted by the majority, there is still much speculation and concerns about the safety of its uses. A few of these involve religious issues, corporate control of the food supply, intellectual property rights, and the level of specification needed on the labels of genetically modified products. An immediate health concern with eating genetically modified foods is allergens. An example is an incident involving Starlink modified corn in 2000, where many of their Kraft products were called back due to contamination. There have been more cases where gene modification has gone wrong, like the peas in Australia that caused immune responses. Also, there are more things that should be considered in the use of genetically modified food. For example, some products may not have listed out all of its components, some of which could harm us or offend religions. If the labeling on the product does not state the appropriate contents, it could result in very serious consequences.
Currently, the technology we possess has advanced to the point where 70% of our food intake is genetically modified before sale. Thus, it will be almost impossible to completely list out all the genetically modified foods. Some estimates say as many as 30,000 different products on grocery store shelves are modified. That's largely because many processed foods contain soy. Half of North America's soy crop is genetically modified. One of the most common examples are the cheese we consume almost every day. Cheese contains chymosin. Chymosin is an enzyme produced in a young cow's stomach, responsible for breaking down the milk. But the cheese is still safe to eat, as after the chymosin has broken down the milk, the enzyme will be extracted and the cheese will be purified.
Hence, based on the pros and cons of genetically modified food, it is still a relatively new field of research and needs more work to be done in order for it to be more widely accepted by the general public. Though it may offer significant increase in crop production, the crops that have been produced may have unwanted side effects, which could have devastating effects on the people that consume such crops.